All right, good morning again, everyone, and welcome back to the KSR YouTube channel. You recognize this car. It says Mike Finnegan's Death Metal Charger. So I'm up at Finnegan's shop up in Georgia, and we are working on some front suspension stuff. Because if you've watched any of his videos on this car, the front suspension needed some attention. So I'm up here trying to get the angles and the geometry at least somewhat acceptable to have a car that steers a little bit more predictably. QA1 hooked Mike up with some control arms, and also there's going to be a new front brake kit so that the car will have some kind of functioning front brakes. So yeah, that's what our job is today. The goal is to be able to take this thing out and drive it in angst somewhere and it be fun and not completely terrifying like it was before. I mean, a little bit of terrifying is okay, but completely terrifying is not okay. So yeah, let's get to it. All right, well, Mike's down here with us now. We're working on fabbing up some spacers. Mike's working on putting the brakes on this side. Always read the instructions, right?
Yeah, they're kind of vague though. It just says, really? It just says attach the caliper mounting bracket. All right.
Well, when all else fails, read the instructions, right? So that's what we're trying to do. And if you guys remember, this thing was kind of custom. Like with these
custom with a K.
with these upper mounts, and they don't fit the spacers that came with the kit. So Mike had some spacers laying around, and he's got a new little mini lathe over there on the bench, and we are making our own custom spacers to be able to bolt this together and not have 1,000 washers in here, because stacking a bunch of washers in is a giant pain in the butt. But when we only have 2 spacers to worry about, it makes life a little easier. So I think we can get our alignment close enough if we can just get these upper control arms mounted, get our caster and our camber somewhat in the ballpark to where this thing will be enjoyable to drive instead of terrifying when you're trying to drive fast. So let's see what we can do. So to start off on this project, like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is measure the pocket diameter where the control arm is going to attach to the frame, and then fabricate some spacers with Mike's little mini lathe here from Eastwood. For little projects like this, it works really good for making little tiny spacers like this, and spacers are so much easier to work with than a whole ton of washers. But basically we measured the pocket diameter, measured the width of the rod ends, and once we have all of that information, it's just down to a matter of machining the spacers to fit. Now it did end up with 4 different length spacers, and looking back, I kind of wish I had mocked this up and seen what I'm about to find out once I get all of these spacers machined, and maybe cut off the mounts first, so then that I could have machined equal length spacers for each side, so you wouldn't have to very specifically place the spacers in each location on the upper control arm, because basically we've got 4 different length spacers now. But we did document all of that, so it's easy to put them back in there where they need to go. And now I'm kind of swinging it through its travel, just putting an eyeball on it to see what the suspension is now doing, and I'm going to find out that we still have another issue to deal with. Well, if you saw there in my time lapse some mocking up and some different things, and it's starting to look like we may have to chop these off and lower them down, because basically what's happening is, well, I've got an acceptable amount of camber here. We're like 2.5 degrees in, which for, you know, a dirt racer, that's not bad. But the problem is when we get up to ride height, because this bar gets straight while this control arm, and this control arm comes up and starts to actually return the arc back in. We end up gaining positive camber instead of gaining negative camber with compression. So that's not ideal. Bo, do you agree? That's not good?
Yeah. Anytime he points his butt at the project, that's how you know. He's like, I'm done with this. I have an idea.
What's that?
And it kind of hoses us. It means we're not finishing this in the 48 hours we have to work on it. But I have a friend that has a front clip off a 68 Charger 2 hours from here.
Oh my.
And we could just make this a field trip and go get that. And then...
Could do that?
Spend the next 48 hours lopping the frame rails off this thing and the front end off this thing and putting it back to stock with inner fenders and control arm mounts, and then I'll take it from there after that and bolt everything back together.
That's certainly an option.
Or we cut the mounts off the frame rails, move them and regusset them, and keep on trucking.
Yeah, that was what I had just talked about, was cutting these and dropping them down as much as we could. Like the problem would be with the rear, we can only go down probably an inch in the rear, but that might get us enough. Anything we can do to get the plane of this arm swinging closer to the plane of that arm,
right,
would be better. So I guess we got some stuff to think about.
We can think about that while eating Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A is here. It's time for lunch. All right, so I'm going to try and show you guys a little bit of what's going on. Maybe this can be a little bit more informative. But basically, this control arm is this, we'll call it angled down 16 degrees. But you can't really see that. There you go, 16 degrees down. This control arm down here is only 7.5 degrees. So as this control arm comes up to level, this control arm is still down, so it's pushing the top out. So if you watch the angle, you see how this spindle angle is going down, which is positive camber, while the suspension is traveling up. Well, that's not the way it should be. Ideally, for anything on a road race or a car you want to turn left and right, you want to maintain your camber setting here, or even gain a little bit more, because if you think about it, when you're in a corner and the suspension compresses on this side, like say we're turning to the right, well, this tire gets all the load and the car might roll a little bit. So to keep the tire flat, you need to gain a little bit of camber. Well, right now we're losing camber as we go up and travel. Well, let me see if I can actually put a number on it. We have the tools for that, don't we? Okay, so right there, 2.6 degrees negative camber. Come up to about ride height, and we are already 0.6 degrees positive. And we compress and we go to 1.6 degrees positive. So not ideal. I was hoping to get about 2 at ride height and then see, anywhere from 2.5 to 3 once we bumped it in, as well as the caster stay the same. Now we seem to be okay in the caster department, but not great on the camber department. All right, so before we take 4 hours to go to Matt's house, I'm gonna try and do some cutting. I think we may be time ahead and can make this better, because the more I got to thinking about it, like obviously all this is in the way of inner fenders here, so the inner fender would have to be cut out again. On the other side, there's the turbocharged piping, so that ain't gonna work. Mike's actually got a conference call he needs to get on. So instead of riding down the road, him just being on the conference call, I'm gonna try this, and then we'll see where things end up. Sometimes cars are a little bit of an experiment, especially one that's had some interesting engineering applied to it. So yeah, I'm gonna haul off into this thing and make a bunch of noise. Got my some earplugs in. let's see what happens. All right, well, now it's time to get to the cutting part. First thing we've got to do is take everything apart and get it out of the way so we don't risk scratching or cutting up our shiny new parts from QA1. Break out the Sawzall and start cutting the mounts off the frame. We never really figured out what these mounts were from, but obviously they're not stock because the spacers that came with the kit were way too narrow to fit the upper control arm into those factory frame pockets. And sometimes with cars, at least for me, I just jump off in it and make things work as I need to. So you saw me cut the rear upper control arm mount there to lower it down. That way we can try and get the upper control arm angle at a much better location compared to the lower. Initially, I didn't go quite the full amount that I could have gone. I left myself about a 1/2 inch of more material that I could cut out of the upper control arm mounts to lower them down even more. And we end up needing to go back and cut out that 1/2 inch later, but you can kind of see my process here for at least locating them. I took a piece of 1/2 inch square rod to align the front and rear upper control arm mounts. Now I'm cleaning the rusty metal to try and find some kind of good metal that I can then weld the upper control arm mounts back to. Vacuum all the debris out of it so none of that contaminates the weld when we start welding the stuff on here. And we're going to just tack weld these on and then reassemble the front suspension to then check the caster and camber gain through the suspension travel. And then once we do all that, we'll decide on whether we need to cut it back off and do some more work. Ready?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, we just tacked it to begin with, just to see if the proof of concept is there. And we are looking at, what is that, 1.4? Is it facing the right direction? I can't get close enough or far enough away from it to see. My eyes are getting old.
1.35.
Is it?
Can't tell which way the arrow's going.
Okay, yeah, it's gaining as I tip the bottom out, so that's 1.4 negative camber. So it comes back. Which way is that? Okay. It's so it's 1 degree there. Comes back, loses a little bit right through the middle as the upper arm straightens out. But then as it goes up, it actually gains a little bit. It's numb right through the middle. See, we're at 0.6 there.
Numb would be 0.
It's actually 0.6 positive there. And then it goes to 0 all the way up there, but that's higher than I think the steering is going to allow it to travel.
So basically at ride height we're at 0?
Well, I'm just looking at the changes in the sweep.
Right.
So, like right now we haven't even adjusted these again, but it seems like
It's no longer going positive.
Yes, it's no longer like tipping the tire out as the travel goes up. I think it's going to do what we need it to do.
Suddenly Bo's interested. Bo, you look guilty. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Let's see, I'm running this.
There's all these things on the floor. What do you think? Better alignment? Yep, better alignment.
He didn't turn his butt to it this time.
No, not this time. Not this time.
Oh, hi, Bo. Alright, so that's actually -3 now that I adjusted it there. Still has clearance there. I was a little worried about that. So let's bring it up to about ride height. So it does lose a little bit from full droop. But then we go up and over. So it's -1.2, -0.8, 1. Certainly better than it was.
Yes.
And we still have some more we could kick out in the bottom. caster is 0 there and 6. So we're still gaining caster. So that's good. I think maybe we can slide the bottom out just a little bit more, and I think we'll be all right.
Yes.
Like, it's not perfect,
No.
but it's way better than it was.
This was a mess before.
Yeah.
I can't wait to drive it like this. Even if it was 0, like even if the tire was flat.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better than it was.
Thanks for the help, Bo.
Look it out.
Thanks for the help, Bo.
Dog hugs.
Thanks for the help. Oh, goodness. Okay. Okay, thanks for the doggy kisses. Let's say we're going to make it lower in the front by 1 inch, so 22 inches. So that's 1.3 degrees at ride height of camber. Goes down to 1 there and kind of maintains that 1. It doesn't quite gain. Like, I could have done it maybe a little shorter, which we are only tacked.
Yeah, we're good enough to go.
I took it about as much as I thought I could back here without chopping this part out, because we won't be able to get the bolt in. See this, his old support that he had here.
Oh yeah.
But if we just cut that out, that might actually make more sense, and we can weld all over the top of all these frame rails and then make a plate that fits down below it.
Mm-hmm.
So that might, yeah. Anything we gain now only makes stuff better.
I'll get the plasma cutter.
All right. Hopefully we can make everything go back together as good the second time. Because that worked out really well with the spacing and all that stuff. All right, well, proof of concept is good. Now we're gonna make it a little bit better and then jump over to the other side. All right, well, while you're here on the channel, please give us a subscribe, click the like button, give us a comment, and we'll try to reply to you down there in the comment section. And if you also click the black notification bell, you will get an email or a text notification anytime that we release a video. It helps you guys stay up to date on what we're doing. We obviously appreciate that. All the interaction that you guys give us on the videos in the comment section, or even just a simple like, that helps out the YouTube algorithm and keeps us relevant in the YouTube world. And also a big thanks to everybody who's been buying merch at the Win with KSR website. Got all kinds of stuff on there, from shirts to hats to stickers, even some posters of cars like Soccer Mom. Got some other things coming possibly here in the near future with a new shirt design that you guys will see in the not too distant future. But I'm hauling off now and building the brake system for the Death Metal Charger on the front. And you can kind of see I'm using the wheel for holding the hub while I am torquing all of the stuff. Yes, I prefer to torque everything as the instructions say to do instead of just hammering things together with an impact. Some people get away with that, but I would prefer to do it at least the way I feel is the right way. I mean, they do put all kinds of time and effort into designing these kits, and engineers that are way smarter than me design all the kits and the torque specs, and I am not the kind of person that thinks I'm smarter than an engineer. So we're going to just follow their directions, torque everything as it says. And the funny thing is about all of this, if you were kind of paying attention, the wheel studs have to go into the hub first before you install the back hat and then the rotor. Well, Mike had ordered 2 different wheel spacers to adapt the 8-lug wheels to the car. Well, one of those wheel adapters was for a Ford bolt pattern, a 5 by 4.5, and the other was for a 5 by 4 3/4. Well, it turns out, of course, you know, the way things go with cars, the one that we initially set the hubs up for was the one that did not end up working the best for the car. So we ended up taking all of these brake hubs back apart. Now, thankfully, I only did one side. So, you know, we mocked it all up on the driver's side here and then figured out that we had to go the other way. So it wasn't too big of a deal, but it did kind of stink that we had to go backwards, reapply all the Loctite, break everything loose and break the hub down to, you know, start back over with the wheel stud installation. But like I said earlier, that's cars sometimes. Sometimes you end up going backwards to then go forwards, to go backwards again, to go forwards until you finally get done with your project and it does everything that you wanted to do. So Mike is finishing up welding the control arm mounts on the driver's side over here, and then he very shortly will be jumping over to the passenger side. But you saw I had a brake line there. He's welding the brake line mounting tab on the driver's side, which we end up running over to another shop to get some brake lines, which I didn't film, but it was a really cool shop in Georgia called RK Racecraft. They build some super awesome fast cars, like some Pro Mods, all the way down to your Radial versus the World type cars, and even some tractor pulling stuff that was there in the shop while we were there. But I didn't film that. This video is already turning out to be long enough without having all that in there, but it was super cool to go see it all. So after we got the upper control arm mounts shaved down a little bit more for this go around, we mocked it up and we've got that camber gain that I was looking for initially. Mike's got a pretty neat trick there. You saw him run around with the vacuum cleaner. That actually works really good and helps keep the dust filtered out of the area. Maybe even better than a shop vac. Like with the vacuum cleaner, you can get a filter in the vacuum that sucks out the allergens in the air. So it's actually kind of nice. But I was pretty happy that we were able to get the geometries and everything as close as we did. I think the car is going to do really well when we get it out on, say, a road course track, or even when they take it back to Dirt Fish or another rally type event or location where you can bomb this car around in the dirt and have a good time with it. But in the middle of all of this, we get the hubs assembled and we find out that they don't fit the spindle perfectly. And as it turns out, most of the people, or probably everybody else that has bought this spindle kit from Willwood and QA1, uses a larger brake kit because they're not using small 15-inch or even 14-inch wheels is kind of what this brake kit looked like it would fit. So we kind of pause a little bit and think about we may be going over to do another of Mike's projects just because we're not sure we can make the brake kit fit the spindle without grinding away too much in a certain area. So you'll see that more in Mike's videos, so be sure to check that out and subscribe to his channel if you're not already. Probably are, but if you're not, you should be. And once we get this thing finalized up, we'll probably be taking it somewhere and I'll get to go drive it. And of course, you know we're going to make videos on that. So let's get back to the video, the live action, and wrap this video up. All right, well, Mike's bombing some weld on the other side. Pretty much got both sides matching each other. I think my face is a little dirty from grinding and cutting and welding all day. But I think we're gonna have a somewhat usable alignment setup. We do have maybe something to wait on the brakes, but we'll get to that tomorrow. This thing, normally you shouldn't have to do this much work when installing a QA1 kit, but this car's very custom.
Yeah, custom. Custom means cool, right? Not more work, more money, more time, but cool.
It depends, I guess.
It's not for everybody.
Race cars. Sometimes they just take a little extra time to work on. Actually, pretty much all the time. Whatever time you think you're going to spend working on your race car, triple it, and you'll be close.
Totally worth it.
But yes, it is very worth it because race cars are fun. T-shirt available at winwithksr.com. Merch plug.
Solid.
She's smoking.
Solid merch plug. Yeah, I was melting my flashlight apparently.
Oh, that's not good.
These things happen.
Whoops. All right, so that's gonna wrap up this video. Might be back tomorrow on this. Might be on another project, just because we're not sure if we have the correct brake parts. But stay tuned to Mike's channel if you don't see anything from me about that project. But thanks again for watching and subscribing. We will see you guys next time.